Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I'm here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork, and our producer extraordinaire, Dan Vadeboncoeur. We are, I hope, in the last recording phase of the poorest sound quality our podcast has ever known, in the hopes that the trio of us, soon to be double vaxxed, will be able to appear together in the same space, even if we must be responsibly distanced, to have proper sound recording again. This is the last episode we're recording before our summer break also, dear listener. So there'll be a little while where you don't hear from us. But when we come back, we hope it will be with all the timbre and bass that all our voices can provide. Isn't that true, Dan?
Sure.
Justin and I were talking about listening to old episodes of this podcast and how crystal clear and beautiful our audio was. And it's made us pine for a time when we can reach across together and hold hands amid the tangled cords of our
podcast. You never did that. You never held hands. Come on.
But I'm gonna now.
Oh, you are.
We shared Timbits, which is the Canadian equivalent of holding hands.
That's true. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so we're on the threshold of things being different. I won't say normal anymore, but they'll just be different again. And I'm looking forward to that. A couple of endings have occurred and a couple of new beginnings are on the rise for me. Which I think maybe should be our theme for today's episode, endings and beginnings. I'll start. I have finished my tenure helping out St. James School Division and their teachers, taking their students on classroom story adventures and doing drop-in drawing and all kinds of fun explorations with pens and papers and top-down cameras. So that's coming to an end, and it was, I have to say, bittersweet. I had a moment where a group of kids, when I logged in, stood up each individually in their homes and recited part of My Captain to me. My final day.
Aww.
And I didn't have the heart to tell them that I had never seen Dead Poets Society, but that I understood the reference well enough to be touched by it.
How can you never have seen Dead Poets Society?
You know, it's one of those things. I'm a passionate educator, Dan, and it's one of those things where everyone I've ever met has said, "Have you seen Dead Poets Society?" So out of a bitter, frustrated, stubborn resentment, I just haven't. Every time I avoid it. Every time I hear it's
remind them. Is it because you remind them of the title of Robin Williams' character in the movie?
I guess
You're that
so.
kind of teacher. That's a compliment. I think that's a good thing, right?
I guess so. But you know, it's like if you find that you're inadvertently living out another person's cliche, you don't want to see it. We were just talking about Bo Burnham's white woman's Instagram before this, right? So some people got really called out by that. So
but they're all, like most people I saw were okay with it and laughed at it. Like, yes, you're making a good point here. These are very similar to a lot of different posts on Instagram, and that was the joke, right? So I haven't seen anybody get upset about being called out on it because it's all in good fun.
They are on the internet though, so you know someone's mad somewhere.
Yeah.
Beginnings wise, I've been cheating on you guys. I'm sorry, a little bit. It's not a podcast though, technically.
That's okay then, I don't care.
We've been pre-recording. I've been invited to be a guest on a channel that is called Inside Movies. Previous guest George is the host of this, and we have been reviewing some classic films. We just did Superman, 1978 Superman, and then Jurassic Park, and then on my recommendation, we're going to rip apart that new Wolfman remake and a few other things. So that's been fun.
Like the Anthony Hopkins
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins is delight in it, but the rest of that film is quite horrible.
Also, I remember terrible CG, right? A lot of CG Wolfman.
So many things that are bad. It's interesting because on this podcast, I make it a point not to like rip on other people's stuff, or at least I try not to.
Unless it's Lake Placid, and then gloves are off.
Well, Lake Placid is not, it's not art, so it's
That's
okay
not
to
cinema.
attack
That
it.
doesn't count.
Lake Placid is art. It is cinema. I will defend it to my dying day.
I'm
Great
just
film.
going to add that to the list of Inside movies, I think, and you're going to have to come be a guest on.
I'm going to send them an email, get them to have Dead Poet Society on there next, so you look like a fool.
Damn it.
Can we spoil the movie? One of the students dies.
Yeah.
What?
Spoiler. One of the students dies.
Well,
30-year-old movie?
30 years
40.
forward.
Almost 40.
If
40?
you haven't seen My Girl, it's a bee sting that gets her.
Him.
Is it him? Oh yeah, it's him in the end. I don't know. I haven't seen that movie. I haven't seen that movie in 30 years. So we do this kind of stuff. We trash stuff more there, and it's strange for me to be so unimpeded in my ability to
I think
not have to set a good
podcast,
example for the guests.
This podcast is meant to encourage people and to inform people and help people like get started and sell their art and make comics and do all the things that you guys do. So that's why you don't want to be negative and don't want to tear anything down, even if it's a major Hollywood movie, because you want to be positive and encouraging. But in a podcast in which you're basically the premise of the podcast is to criticize film, right? Is that the idea, or is it to celebrate film?
We give the good, the bad, and then our skinny. Yeah, we celebrate plenty of stuff. Sure.
But I mean, you have to. When it comes to something like that, you have to take the good with the bad, right? You can't just ignore all the horrible things. Is this the Wolfman one with Benicio del Toro? Is that the one we're talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
I want to say it for my other show, but the set design is exquisite, and that's all.
Okay. See, I'm like, I can't see when you do the perfect werewolf movie is An American Werewolf in London, and that's like 1982 or 3 or something like that, and that's perfect. You can't do better than that. So why even try?
Yeah,
Silver Bullet was
that was
pretty delightful.
Yeah, that was pretty good too.
Yeah,
that's true.
Is there a good CG werewolf movie?
No.
Like once the mid 90s hit, and like even American Werewolf in Paris, the follow up with like all the terrible the terrible CG werewolves.
Okay. Well, I don't know how we ended up talking about werewolves instead of comics or making books, but
I don't mind.
I'm down with this. Let's take a moment and observe
the
greatest films of werewolf thing ever, and it's
Dog Soldiers.
Yes,
Dog Soldiers was amazing
because it's all practical.
It's all practical.
Whatever isn't practical, you can't tell isn't practical, and it is so gross and so dumb and so genius all at the same time. It's wonderful.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's a bunch of soldiers, Dan, out on a training exercise, and they find a cabin in the wolves, and then they get attacked by a family. A cabin in the woods, pardon me, who's the family that lives there are all werewolves, and they attack the soldiers in return. It's amazing.
Greg, I think you just stumbled upon a new premise for a film, Cabin in the Wolves. So it's instead of a cabin in the woods, it's a cabin surrounded by wolves. And that's the premise. And you have to get out of the cabin and escape the wolves.
Cabin in the Wolves.
Starring Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson, no, he would voice the head wolf after he got eaten by in the gray. His spirit.
Did he get eaten? I thought
haven't seen that.
I haven't either. Way to spoil it. Jeez.
This episode of Super Pulp Science contains many spoilers.
I have dedicated all my scientific knowledge and skill to projects which I knew could be put to evil purposes.
Other beginnings include The Eye Collector, which will be out very soon through Heavy Metal Virus imprint, creator-owned imprint that they have. My co-conspirators there, Lyndon Rachenko, and my co-writer and creator, Dr. Jonathan Ball. We've been working furiously to get the final files over to the publisher, And it will be released as 5 individual issues available through Heavy Metal. And then I guess later this year, before the end of this year, the final trade paperback will be available in bookstores the world over, thanks to Simon & Schuster's distributors. So
Cool.
Kind of exciting to pull that out of the horrid mess that was 2020.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, super exciting.
It's also pretty weird and esoteric, and it's so different from my Moon Patrol book that I think anyone who sees the two together come out in the same year will assume that there's some kind of misprint, some kind of misappropriation or a misattribution, because it looks like the work of two completely different people.
And I'm sure we've talked about this on the podcast before, but where, like, Moon Patrol's publishing plan, what is the plan there? Is there somebody attached to that?
We haven't talked about that.
No, we don't.
No.
We've talked about making it a lot, but what are you thinking as far as getting that book made? Are you going to kickstart it? Are you going to do it yourself? You shop it around?
Yeah, so all of the above, I think, is the short answer, is that it's going to be, I'm at 175 pages as of 20 minutes ago. 375 pages. And I think I'm going to be able to round it out at 400 pages. And then it is this meaty black and white tome that is the right kind of complete story that I think is good for doing something that I haven't done too seriously in the past, something Justin, you and I just talked about recently, which was hunt for an agent. It's the right kind of book in the right kind. It just happens to have the right constituent parts that I think would be a good manuscript to hunt an agent out for the first time. My problem with finding an agent has always been that I am usually 3 contracts deep with other publishers while I'm hunting for an agent. And so telling them they can't have any of the books I already sold myself is often the end of that conversation.
Really?
So
an agent wants a piece of everything you do. And if you have money coming in that they can't have, they don't want it.
But look at all the stuff you published yourself, and you can surmise that you're going to also continue to publish those things. There's an equal amount of work there that they can put their name on or be a part of or make money from.
Yeah, but they can't have anything I've already done. I'm not going to give an agent a percentage of any work I've already done before they arrive.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
But I don't. It's pretty standard for an agent who is then wanting to renegotiate or sell other things to then want a piece of that. And so, so far, the views of the agents that have been interested in my work have been a little bit, in my opinion, as biased as it is, a little bit myopic in that way. And so I just haven't worried about it because it hasn't gotten in my way. But I have sort of a 5-year plan that would make having an agent really useful.
Well, that leads into my next question, which what will this? So, if you are able to get an agent, you successfully attract an agent with this, then now what? What can you do that you weren't able to do before?
I can
actually. We should do a step before that. What do you need to apply for an agent?
Both
of those are excellent questions. So let's back up and give some context to the dear listener. Justin and I recently had this conversation about agents. They've been on my mind because I think his new book is also the exact kind of book that would light an agent's pilot light and keep their furnace burning for a long time. And so I was encouraging him to do that, and he's leapt with both feet into this conversation. So it's on all of our minds. So the 2 questions you asked, refresh my memory, Dan. You asked.
Justin's like, how do you apply to get an agent? And then I'm like, well, now what? And when you get an agent, what can you do that you couldn't do before?
Okay, so it's different for a person who's never had one and is entering into trying to have their work published and represented. So give a little context to your listener. Most large publishers will not accept unagented manuscripts. They want to have an agent attached so that they don't have to do any hand-holding or any convincing when it comes to the sale of rights of that book. They want the agent to be their advocate so they can be quick and dirty to get it done fast and efficiently.
And I imagine that it also shows that the author is at a certain level, right? Is all like?
Yeah, it's definitely like a.
Like, you know, it's going to be hopefully be good quality if the person has gone to the trouble. If the agent has kind of given that content the green light, then it's probably, you know, publishable, I assume. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good way of looking at it. How they
this
think
is
of it.
the tangled mess in which commerce and art get involved.
Yeah,
an agent wants to represent work that they will be able to sell and earn a percentage of. So they're looking at commercial value and how quickly and readily they're going to be able to sell that product and then earn their commission off of that. And there are better agents who have a lot of heart. If you're an agent listening to this, you're like, no, I put art first. I know you're out there. There are plenty of you out there, but you're full. Your lists are full, it seems to me, with excellent, talented people.
If you have an opening.
And so it seems only the misers are interested in returning my emails right now. And when I tell them that they can't have any of the work I'm already earning money off of, they get a little disappointed. So what you need to get an agent is a finished manuscript and a track record of publishing and finishing work, because the agent wants to sell that piece. Is it possible to get an agent right out the gate with a fresh manuscript? Yes. How do you do that? You have to submit to lots of agents and try to find one. And I've been to the threshold many times with a number of different potential agents, but they just haven't fit. Over the last, 3 to 5 years, I've had lots of run-ins with potentially people who could represent me. But the problem for me is that even though I work only in a minor way in film, television, say video games, theater, comics, and prose, I work in a lot of in too many areas for an agent to say, I know enough about all those areas to pitch those projects. And so you need multiple agents in a lot of ways, and many people do that. I know a few that have an agent for their different creative outputs, but there is like that unicorn out there with the perfectly braided horn that can do a lot of things that I can do. That's what I'm holding out for, because I'm doing all that stuff myself now anyway. So I might as well wait until there's someone who can do it better. As to Justin's point about what you need,
you just need the script.
You just need to have it finished.
Yeah, so I recently found a website that kind of listed a bunch of agents that are available and kind of what they're specifically looking for. So some, are looking specifically for graphic novels, some not so much, some only kids books, some only poetry books. So it has like kind of a list of agents that are available and what they're into. And then every single agency has like a slightly different process.
Cutting out again, Justin.
Although I'm loving this, I should screen capture his
that's
perfect.
Great. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna keep that one for later.
Yeah, we'll keep that in.
I wonder how much this is going on, Dan, in frozen Zoom calls. How many embarrassing screenshots of myself exist in the world?
That is happening all over the place. I guarantee it.
What are you trying to do? Destroy us all! I'm taking over.
So you've managed to publish quite a few books over, your career, without an agent. You even, obviously, I think probably the highest level for you was the baby medal, right? Is that an accurate thing to say? Like that was, sorry, I forgot the publisher.
It's not connected between some of the publishing I did with Portage and Main and some of the stuff I did with Z2, and both ones that are that went pretty far and have done or continue to do quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. But is this like a key to getting an agent? Is this like your foot in the door at some of the bigger, like at the Marvel building or the DC building? Is that something they're looking at, or is that not part of this?
It's interesting. It's increasingly, as distribution shifts away from Diamond and centralized distribution, towards larger book distribution, agented graphic novels through larger book publishers are much more lucrative and creatively free in the way that I could pursue them than, say, working at Marvel or DC. Not to say that I wouldn't work at Marvel or DC if someone, and I've submitted stuff to, all this year I've been submitting everywhere, all kinds of different things. And so if I get a call back on a project, large or small, for one of those, I would do it. But you have to know that when you work for Marvel or DC, you will own nothing. You will likely receive death threats from the people who hate the work. And I'm not even joking. That's just like par for the course now. There was like a unofficial support group for new Marvel writers that seemed to be forming on Twitter of like, hey, new Marvel people from the last few years, how many of you get death threats? And the number of people who chimed in, it was astonishing. Like, it's this sport hatred that goes on if you work for a recognizable brand. Is part of what that is. And I'm not really keen on that, but I guess you'd have to accept it. Your Twitter following will grow by 30,000 and your hate mail will grow by 100%.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's part of the price you pay for fame, right?
Yeah, and I wonder, because you don't own any of it after, is it worth the price that you pay?
But it would increase your profile and put your work in front of a lot of new eyeballs, and that probably would also translate into more sales for the rest of your stuff. I would imagine it's ultimately a good thing. If you go into an understanding that you're not going to own anything, then you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's an important. I mean, everyone has their list of stuff that they'd want to work on with other companies, like stuff you think would be fun, and I have mine too. But right now, I'm just having a much more fun, and I think Justin can speak to this, making up our own stuff.
Yeah.
This has been Justin Curry, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like in that you're like Bruce Willis in the Fifth Element when what's his name holds the mic up to him. He's like, yes. That's it. One word.
When Ruby Rod holds the mic.
Yes,
Ruby Rod.
Right. I'm the Ruby Rod in this scenario.
Now, Justin, you were talking. You got cut off by the. You froze up there and into the best screenshot ever. But what were you saying before that about aging? Because you've done work with Marvel. You didn't need an agent for that necessarily. So what? Like, do you want an agent? Is this something you're looking for?
So yeah, I kind of wanted to look into. Basically, there's no downside into me applying for agents right now. I'm self-publishing my books right now. My distribution model is through my online following, and that's going well. But an agent could get some of my completed works into a much wider distribution than I could do by myself, and then it could also, get me potentially for like that next project or that next book, I could have an into a much bigger distribution network than I could get myself. So it's just kind of it's something I feel like I probably should have been doing throughout my career a little more, but I just never did because I kind of had things figured out and things were working the way they were. But yeah, so I've had it on my list for a while, like just apply. It's kind of like when you apply to a bunch of book publishers every now and then, which I still do, is apply to a bunch of agents and just see what you can catch. So I just, like I said, I found that list of a whole bunch of agents that were interested in graphic novels, and I whittled that down to people who seemed like they had similar interests to me. I was surprised how of like the 100 agents that I was looking at, I think like 98 were women and 2 were men. It was mostly female agents, which was kind of cool.
My experience also.
And then I was a little like, I was not annoyed, but it was, everybody said they were looking for graphic novels, but all their query things that you had to fill out were geared towards novels. They were all asking for the first 10 pages of script in a Word document. And here I am with a graphic novel with like 0 words in the first 10 pages, wondering like, nobody accepts attachments, right? Like nobody wants me to, so I have to like write out describing the first 10 pages of my graphic novel rather than just, So I ended up sending out, like, I made a dormant website page on my website with just some sample pages and sent them a hyperlink rather than describing work that's already done so they can read it rather than look at it. So it seemed like all their inquiry setup was definitely geared towards writers, not for graphic novelists or people with scripts, not people with finished work. So that seemed like a bit of a hurdle.
The infrastructure in place for reviewing manuscripts in traditional publishing is geared towards prose novels. And it's not new that big publishing is interested in comics, but there's a surge going on right now, and everyone's looking to land the next big one, because we're talking about repeat customers. Okay, we're going to talk business here for a little bit, just the smallest amount. If you buy a graphic novel, the average person reading it, if I just use my kids as an example, as a direct example, it might take them a couple of days to finish a really thick graphic novel. Less than a day usually, but sometimes they sip it, which means they are immediately a new consumer again. I know that sounds very crass, but they want another one, they want the next one. And book publishers are realizing that most people who buy a novel, it sits for a while until they have time to read it, and then it takes them a while to read it. And then by then, the hype of a different book has usually led them away from that author or into another place. So the cycle of reading, engagement, interest, and action, which is everything in consumerism, as crass as that is very high in graphic novels. And the book publishers have finally realized that. And strangely, the comic publishers are still on that floppy model of like put it out as 5 or 6 individual issues and then eventually put it together as a trade rather than just get the whole thing finished and get it out. So there's all these different ways that it's being done right now, and it'll be interesting to me to see where it goes.
It was really strange walking through the hospital in the dark. No sound. Empty beds.
Yeah, I imagine that the idea behind the comic publishing, I mean, that's the old model of like, weekly or monthly comic books, monthly usually. That's been done forever, right? That's the old subscription of the like almost like newspapers or anything else that was made back then. So, and it was
right. And if you're looking for distribution through newspapers or any of that kind of like, the equivalent now is, of course, as anyone who is halfway savvy has probably been yelling at us, webcomics, right, which update weekly or sometimes twice a week, are the new way to get millions of people to see your work right away.
Yeah.
The problem for webcomics is that it's a young person's game, in that a young person has more time to work on something and not be paid for it than many people who are sort of into their twilight years, like Justin, right? Is getting old and starting to get dried out. He needs to be paid for his labor because he's got more things to worry about. Isn't that right, Justin?
I've actually noticed on Kickstarter, more and more people releasing like issues of a comic, and that like progressively, like they have a successful for issue 2. So then issue 3 comes out in a couple months. Like they've released 12 separate issues on Kickstarter just a couple months apart, rather than putting together a trade. They're using that same model, but they've found Kickstarter has been working for it. So
they kickstart.
They kickstart every issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of that going on. It is interesting. It fuels a part of comics that I will go on record as saying I've always despised, which is the speculator market. The idea that I'm going to buy something because it's rare, whether or not I think it's good, or whether or not I'm ever going to read it.
Well, no, I don't think they're doing limited editions. I think they're doing it because it's a small ask. If if they're trying to get a one issue funded, they're asking for like $2,000 or less. If it's a trade, they need $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 to do it. So I think they're doing it piecemeal so they can keep time and their ask low, I think is part of it. And when the new Kickstarter kicks in, they have all the back issues available. They're not doing, I don't think they're doing limited editions. I think you can still get, 1, 2, 3, 4 when 5 comes out.
I really appreciate your optimism and point of view there. For a moment, I sounded like an old man yelling at clouds.
I think that it's interesting when you're talking about like the format of comic books and how that's changed, because when you think about it, I think the reason why they did the publish all, like I've got a ton of old comic books here, and they're all like they're old, they're from the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, but they're not meant to be like, I'm not meant.
You can tell from that ad on the back.
Yeah, so many ads.
Oh yeah, there's fun. Here, yeah. That's what I mean.
Easily D&D art on the back.
Like this is like. Yes. Nostalgia, right? All these different ads and stuff. But here's the thing: this is not meant to be a thing that you would keep. Like again, you would read this and toss it aside, and it would get beat up and then ripped and that kind of stuff. And I mean, obviously, the collectors keep their ones in bags and with boards and stuff. But that wasn't the intention of comic books to begin with. And then when you reprint them in a trade, then you're able to sell that comic book again, probably to the same person, right? Because if I like this story, I'm going to buy it again to keep to reread. This is not necessarily meant to reread.
Right.
I might not like this story, and I might toss it aside and never think about it again. That was what comic books were about, really, because you could just kind of just buy a bunch of them, and they used to be a lot cheaper too. Remember Bonkers? Oh my God, remember this?
Yeah, when the price point on a comic from 75 cents US to $4.50 US, you had a real change in how people treated them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we can never go back to that price point, that dollar price point or under.
So the equivalent now is the digital. So we can now read comics digitally. You can subscribe to Ultimate or whatever I don't know what their things are called, but you can do that. You can also download and I'm talking legally. This is all legal, right? We want to do it the legal, make sure that creators get paid for their work. And obviously there is a torrent issue as well. But the equivalent is the digital comic, which we can now read. And like or not like, and I don't know how expensive digital comics are, if they're cheaper than the printed version, but again, if we really want to,
but they should,
yeah. But this, again, it's the same thing. You're reading it, you're going to decide whether or not you want to keep the story, and then you would buy a trade or something physical to keep it if you really like the story, right? That's kind of how that's evolved.
Yeah, and it's the facet of our conversation is turned to the idea of the form and the function of the book, right? Why we want agents is because both Justin and I are producing work that when it's finished, the book will be done, and we want to go on and start the next book right away. Mm-hmm. And so the agent's job can then be to take that book and run around with it and find the right form, the right format, the right publisher, the right place for it to be presented. And that buys back our time. And I think that's when we kind of danced around the reason why both of us now, after all this time, are looking for agents. It's because we have a body of work sitting undisplayed. We're producing books at a faster rate than we're releasing them. And so the agent can now lift some of that load.
Yeah, they can do the work while you're working on other stuff. You can focus on the next project, right?
Yeah, that's
exactly. Yeah.
Here's a good one.
Illustrated ads. Yeah.
Battle Cruiser ad. Wow. Oh God, my heart is going pitter pat. I have an old Thor here with me.
Cool.
I have my screen.
There's also that releasing issue 1 of a comic and then kind of being able to sit back and look at the numbers. And if if 10% of that print run sells, then you might not work on issue 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like it's a way to kind of test to see if that story is going to work. So going back to the people who are doing it on Kickstarter, I think that's part of it. had a story that could be a trade paperback or 10 issues, and thought, okay, should we spend 2 years and make this into a one graphic novel, or should I spend a month working on it, put it on Kickstarter, and see if this thing has any legs before I put a year of my life into it, year or more of my life into it. And I've been thinking about that lately with some of my books, because I don't have the conventions to really kind of test my stuff out like I used to. Some of these books that are going to take months and months of work, it's kind of tempting to think about releasing a portion of it just to see how people will react.
Yeah, I've been thinking about stuff like that too. I feel though that from my point of view, like you were asking about Moon Patrol and whether or not I should kickstart it. If I were to break it up into individual issues, this is a form over function, and storytelling mechanics, kind of all of those things play into my decisions there. The first 10 pages of Moon Patrol, even the first 22 pages of it, almost, you could argue nothing happens. It just shows you the world in which the book takes place. But because it's 400 pages and I'm sort of conceiving it as you sit down and you have the whole thing at once, if you flip through it, which is what people do with graphic novels, they flip through it to see, is this something I'd be interested in? They'll see 200 pages of the really crazy stuff going on later in the story, and they'll say, if the front is a little slow, it's going to pay off at the end, no problem.
But splitting that into issues wouldn't work, because everybody would be there'd be no payoff in that issue one, so it wouldn't work. Yeah. Because you're taking your time and you're telling a big story.
So if you, dear listener, are a person who can tell a really great, concise 22-page story, by all means, I would encourage you to release single issues on Kickstarter, because then people are going to be satisfied and they're going to come back and want more. I backed a number of Kickstarters over this past year and got, surprisingly, I would say 80% of them fulfilled. So that's amazing. Like, not only did they raise their money, but they also came through and shipped their stuff out. A number of single issues. And there's a whole bunch of them that I am not interested in seeing issue 2 or 3 of. There just seemed like nothing happened. Like it's too much decompression in the storytelling. And that's just where I am as the kind of satisfaction I want from my individual story units, for lack of a better way to talk about it.
Why was your mate trying to kill you?
Because I killed his wife.
Killed his wife? Why?
It was necessary.
Your agent search then, Justin, you sent, and this is important maybe for the dear listener for context, you sent them what book as the hook to try and land an agent?
So I have a book. Gregory and I were talking the other day, and I was telling him about my next book project, which I'm excited to talk about probably when we reconvene after the summer. I'll have lots to say about it. But he was saying that seems like a good book for agents. But I thought to kind of get my feet wet, I should try pitching Dragon Nanny. And the reason I thought that is because, one, I think it's a really strong example of my work. And two, I can then show the agents my Kickstarter, which proves the book was not only already a commercial success, but there's some interest there. And then kind of tie it all up with the line that I own, like, this is all mine, I own it. So if you're like, I have the rights to do whatever I want with this story, right? I think would probably be the first thing that the alarm bell would go off, is a book has already been published. Is the guy talking to me, can he actually do anything with it, right?
And you're in an interesting position too there with, as the artist, most of those agents will be familiar with the idea that the author comes in, writes something, then they find an artist, and the rights would get all screwy there, and usually that makes a mess. But in your case, you have what the dear listeners should know is what's called the clear chain of title. Everyone else who worked on Dragon Nanny has a contract with Justin, and so he is the shot caller on this book, and so he's allowed to go and pitch it. He can make all the all the calls he needs to on it, and he has the proof in writing from everyone involved for those things, which is what an agent would need to then sell it up the food chain.
Yeah, so it seemed like just my newest. I'm the most excited about it. It's the easiest to pitch for me right now. And I like at first I wasn't sure if I should include the Kickstarter. I didn't know if that would be a deal breaker or not. But at the end of the day, it's irrefutable proof that the book can make money. So I thought that should be like a really good thing for an agent to see, right? But again, like I'm new to this, so that was the other thing. I'm excited to pitch agents my next book, and so if I'm gonna screw up, I'd rather do it with Dragon Nanny, which is already doing well, so I don't necessarily need an agent for it. So it's kind of like going into a job interview when you already have a job that you like somewhere else, like there's no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I think it's a real important thing to know that when you're looking for an agent, you need to be able to ask that agent certain questions. And it's much easier if you have the finished book and you have a little bit of financial experience related to what your work is usually generating, because that's what it's. Now, I don't mean to make it sound like all agents are sharks, because they're not, but many of them are, and it's hard to find a good one. I have a number of, both Justin and I have a number of friends in publishing in various places and levels, and many of them have agents, and of the ones that have agents, I'd say of the ones I know personally, maybe 3 in 10 are happy with their agents. So the good ones are out there, but they do not seem to be, it's not a universal truth.
Okay, so let me ask, when say an agent comes back tomorrow and says like, yes, I want to sign you on, what does that contract usually look like? What kind of timeline? Say they want Dragon Nanny, and yeah, how long, what kind of agreement am I looking at potentially?
So, okay, so your question is, what agreement are you looking at? That's not the first question you should ask, in my opinion. The first things you should be asking is you should be counter-examining that person with a few basic questions, like
right.
How responsive and communicative are they? And how do they like to communicate? How often do they like to communicate? What number of times do they like to visit in on a draft in progress? Different people have different thresholds about what they think are intrusive or supportive, and you need to figure out what that is. That's a really big one, I think. How editorial are they? How often will they throw their opinion at an unfinished work or at a work that's for sale, or will they ask for changes? Editorial in the strictest sense of like, cut these 5 chapters and then we can sell it. You want to ask them what they do and how they sold their other works before. What kind of feedback do they give usually with pitches? And can they give examples of that kind of feedback with other authors? Right? And this is not proprietary. They should not be withholding any of that information.
Is this one of those situations where you could reach out to one of their other authors and ask them like, hey, I'm thinking about signing this agent. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with them? Or does that fall into you shouldn't talk about stuff with, like sometimes people get touchy about stuff like that.
So here's my 2 cents about that. Now, this is just my opinion. This is not true. And again, I haven't found an agent that I felt like I should attach my trailer to. But if they're not willing to talk about what they've done that works because it's some sort of secret, maybe it's not true. They should have examples of things that worked, and they should have an honest, open line of communication. They're going to be a very, very, very personal part of your writing process, because they're going to be the advocate for that work. They're the champion of that thing. And you need to know what kind of person that is. And if they can't even communicate how well they are able to do their job for others, then how can they do that job for you?
Mm-hmm. So say that all lines up. What is a typical duration with a client? Is it per book? Is it a yearly thing? Is it based on revenue?
I've heard every version. Yes to
Every
all.
version?
I've heard every
Okay.
version. I've heard some agents that like to work strictly on, they want to know. Okay, so here's a very specific example. I'll leave all the names, all the people names will be changed to protect the innocent. But one deal that I'm aware of was someone got an agent, and the agent on the premise that they had 2 books finished that the agent could then take to market, could take and try to sell. The agent liked both of the works, felt strongly that they could do it, and the promise or the understanding was that the next 2 books would be the same flavor, so that agent could build momentum in a proper trajectory of that work. And then when the author stumbled a little and unfortunately had a new idea that didn't match that, even though it was the work they were most passionate about and later became their best-selling work when they ended up with a new agent, that agent felt like they had been misrepresented. Like, you promised me this and you didn't do it, and so that's why I'm not working hard to sell your work. So this is where that communication is everything. You have to really like that person, or at least really like how they do business, because they're going to be doing that business for you, right?
So kind of keep in mind what the future could look like with this person.
Yeah, that is what you're doing.
Yeah, they might, was it first right of refusal, right? They might have control over not only that one book, but the next 2 or 3, depending on, no?
Think of it like a band manager, right? We're mixing industry terms here now, but your agent's job is to represent that work, to take it for you to publishers and try to sell it and get you the best deal, to take it and try to get bids on that work, to use their industry connections to find you other work that they know of that they think you might be a good fit for. Because remember, if you're a writer, conceivably, you'll be willing to work on other projects that words are involved in, and they're supposed to keep their ears open for that kind of work for you. So they're supposed to generate leads and sell the work that you've already created. You are not contractually obligated to write X number of words for that agent or X number of books for that agent, usually. And I would be wary of anyone who has an agent contract that demands a certain amount of content from them.
Okay.
But anything someone writes on a piece of paper and you sign, they can call a contract. So you have to be careful what you agree to.
Sometimes I feel as if you and Happy have known each other a long, long time. As though I am the victim of some huge conspiracy, and you and Happy have been sent to be my guardians.
Do agents ever seek out, like, is it always the artists and writers applying to agents, or do agents ever seek out writers and artists? Do they ever approach?
See, this is why I made a couple of jokes about how I'm surprised that you hadn't been approached yet. The agents that do go looking are usually ones that see a high profile project and try to attach themselves to it, right? They
like
see
the work's done.
That's
I
right.
can swoop in now and get a piece.
Yeah, not only swoop in. I mean, again, that makes it sound like everyone's a vulture. Someone could be extremely talented and then just very introverted. Like, they're not able to be a good advocate for their work. And maybe they've got, 100,000 followers on social media, but they've never tried to earn $1 properly with their work. And so an agent might come in and say, have you ever considered the following? But it's usually agents, it's a tough slog for them. They have to work really hard. Agents are not just sitting around for the most part, just hoping that everyone else will work for them and they just take a slice. They're out there selling the heck out of that work because they get such a small percentage. And they need a stable of creators that are going to then equal over the course of a year their ability to live and eat and have a home.
Do you know how many writers a typical agent is managing? I'm sure it ranges wildly, but
yeah, it ranges wildly, and I would not deign to even pretend I'm an expert. In my experience, ones I've talked to, they have anywhere from, and this is just in my personal experience, this is not me speaking for all people's agented experiences, but some of the agents I've talked to, they have as few as 5 and as many as 50 people on their roster. It really depends.
Depends how high profile those people are as well, right? Like if you've got Stephen King, you don't really need to have anybody else.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
But it also comes down to how prolific the artists are, right? You might have 50 people on your list and they only individually produce a great work of art every 10 years, then you manage a long list. But if you have a Justin Curry on your list, then you better get ready for the ride.
Just like going for like looking at so many websites for agents, it's like anything. There is such a diverse, like just the level of quality was all over the place, from some intimidating looking websites to stuff that made me cringe a little bit and move on. So I'm really, and most say too, like agents seem to they're getting a lot of queries. It doesn't matter like what their company is, their agents get emailed a lot. So everybody was kind of quoting like a month to 12, 14 weeks before we get back to you. And if we don't get back to you, it means we just didn't have time to say no. So we passed on you, kind of thing. Like they seem like very busy people who get a lot of stuff thrown at them. I know like in an earlier podcast when we had Sam on, she had to go through, she was kind of like the agent for Cheesing, where she had to go through the slush pile of proposals.
Let's not mix terms now. She wasn't, she was like an acquisitions editor at Cheesy.
Gotcha.
So she wasn't working as an agent. Those authors might have had agents, and she worked with those authors' agents, I think, on occasion. And you made a joke in a text to me recently, like, why can't Sam be our agent? The problem with Samantha Biko, SM Biko, for those of you Googling her work, she's too talented as a writer and artist in her own right. So she cannot be busy representing other people, even though she would be excellent at it because she's got her own career to manage.
The future author of Airlock. I can't wait.
Oh, Sam, if you're listening, write that down.
Can't wait for that.
You
one.
want it.
We should wrap things up, guys.
I can just see it so clearly in my mind as a like 80s slasher teen movie, Mm-hmm. I'm sure the book will be fine, but the movie version I can already see in my head.
You're a monster. Yeah, so
no, that's good. The book's going to be so good it'll immediately be turned into a movie is what I'm getting at.
There's one that's going to get her an agent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Airlock. That's going to be the one. No, we're just going to take credit because we had some small part in generating the basic story beats. That's all.
Well, I mean, it's all recorded. There is definitive proof of how that all came together, and it's episode blank. The story breaking of Airlock. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I think, also, I'm going to tell you right now, so many people who've been trapped at home have finally gotten around to writing that first novel and have finally gotten around to searching for that first agent. So the competition will be fierce. And there's a few people out there I know who are brilliant writers who have entered into that field now, so the competition will be stiff. And then there's every hack and wannabe that's also doing the same thing because they have time to do it.
I think it's a good thing to kind of chip away at throughout your career. Most of the agents will say, like, don't send multiple submissions. And after you send one, like, don't send another for a couple of months. So I have this kind of listed as this was my first wave of experimentation. And come September, I'm going to try again with some new ones and some of the same ones again that I starred as I'm really interested in these guys. So I think I'm gonna like just do that every couple of months periodically. I should just be pitching agents just like I pitch publishers, because there's no downside, and it really doesn't take much time. The work is already done. I'm doing the work regardless.
Yeah.
I should at least be throwing it out there and seeing if some bigger nets might win. So.
There's a argument to be made that we should add 2 or 3 days of agent submissions to our pitch season.
Right. Yeah.
We usually skip that step and figure out how to get it into a publisher's hands. But like you say, the only way to crack those upper echelons is with an agent, because they demand it of you, and it does.
And
from the chaff.
The idea that got me most excited, and you've already had this happen, Gregory, so you don't get to do this again, but the idea of when you're applying to an agent, it's a fresh pitch, it's a new idea, and you just kind of flesh it out enough to get those first 10 pages done and kind of the pitch for the agent, and it gets picked up. Like that, when you're kind of where we are, you can put together the first 10 pages in a pitch in a fairly short amount of time. And if that got picked up for like a major distribution deal of some kind, like how great would that be? I.e., Good Boys.
Yeah, so sweet. It can be
So he doesn't get to do it again because he's already done it once.
He's already done it once, and I was so jealous that he came up with a story on the weekend, and later that week it got picked up for publication by a great publisher.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, the global pandemic kicked that one right in its dog biscuits. So
it just delayed it. It's still happening though, right? It's just delayed.
So I'm going to definitely, now that I know that really bothered you, I'm going to make sure.
It didn't bother me. It fired up the competitiveness though, for sure. I want to do that.
Yeah. Well,
it inspired me, Gregory.
As long as we're telling truths here, Justin, from far away, part of my motivation for working on Moon Patrol so diligently is the way in which those Dragon Nanny pages would come in on such a regular interval, and with so many things that I myself consider myself to be bad at drawing. Like those are things that if I'm writing my own script, I leave that stuff out. That I made a list of all the stuff that I consider myself bad at drawing, and I put it into Moon Patrol, and I just practiced like crazy to do better at drawing that stuff. And so it was my own competitive nature that has really driven this. So you were the splinter that helped get me motivated.
I want my name in the credits now, begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly. We'll have a begrudging credits page.
Yeah, I like it.
Unfortunately, I would like to thank the following. We've been talking about all kinds of ways that things end and things start. And we're going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen, for a few short months while we prepare to return to our studio and proper recordings. This has been Super Pulp Science. This is Gregory Kamichek encouraging you to join the fight and make comments.